All right, so let's get started. First of all, my name is Victor Fizz. I am the Director of Sales Engineers here at Parallels, and I work with the product line, as we call it, Remote Application Server. And in today's webinar, we'll be talking about moving to cloud or rethinking how you can use your remote desktop applications and security workloads in the 21st century ideas, right? Using on-premise, cloud, or hybrid cloud deployments. As I just mentioned, the session is being recorded, so questions will be, answered as we do throughout the presentation and or in the end. And the agenda for today is very simple. We'll be talking about what is Parallels. We'll be discussing about our presence in the marketplace, features, case studies, of course, and a demo where we show you how Remote Application Server can securely deliver your applications using your devices with two-factor authentication, and of course, using the workload that you have in a hybrid environment. And I encourage you in the end of the session, if you would like to start a proof of concept, just go to our website and you can start a 30-day trial using our Azure appliance. That should be available once you click in less than 10 or 15 minutes. So Parallels has been in the marketplace for quite some time, and we have started many years ago running Windows on Macs with our Parallels desktop product line. We have been quite successful in that arena, and also in the Mac management, managing Macs and integrating with the Microsoft framework. But in today's webinar, our main focus will be Parallels Remote Application Server. And Remote Application Server comes with the concept that you can run all of your Windows applications pretty much on any device, either interacting with a client or using client-less approach using HTML5 technologies. So Remote Application Server, we have been working with customers for many years. And in the entire Parallels portfolio, we have more than 50,000 businesses and more than 5 million individuals using Parallels technology. And the idea here is moving more and more to cloud and help you during that transition. And a lot of use cases that we speak with customers is, great, I have my data center and I have cloud, but how they interact to each other, or how I can do it in both ways. So Remote Application Server, basically it's using Microsoft Remote Desktop Services, or a session host, where you install your applications and application containers on Windows servers. And the beauty of our technology is some applications run out of the box on the latest and greatest versions of Windows, but Parallels Remote Application Server is compatible to run all the way back on Windows Server 2003 Service Pack 1. So if you have applications that cannot move to cloud yet, no problem. That particular workload can be transferred and run side by side between those two different technologies with a single management console. And we have certifications and actually reference architectures to work with vendors such as HPE, Nutanix, and as well Microsoft Azure and AWS, which are the two largest cloud providers, if you will, where you can, pretty much have, technologies running on cloud. A couple of years ago, we worked with IDC, and as you can see here, with the major players in the market, we have actually pretty good presence in terms of major players. We are competing heavily on Citrix because of the cost, complexity to manage, and as well, the complexity to keep going and justifying the environments. The second competitor that we see in our marketplace, it's related to VMware. Also cost, functionality, and flexibility to work in multiple or multi-cloud environment deployment. And with Microsoft RDS on its own, we are complementing that technology, adding security or security layer, policy control, and as well, this is very important, easy two-factor authentication broker or connectors with RDS. So we enhance the Microsoft RDS experience throughout the marketplace. And I encourage you, if you go to Parallel's website, you can download this IDC report and you can get a lot of details about it. So how can we help? So in terms of a general concept about Parallel's remote application server, and as well the day-to-day challenges the industry has from a management perspective, from a compliance perspective, and as well from a cost perspective, these are major areas we work with our customer base. When we talk about comprehensive security, how can you make sure applications are compliant or access is compliant to HIPAA or FISMA, or even your own controls and making sure the security that you need is delivered. And a common concept today is to bring into legacy applications two-factor authentication, or instead of rewriting my application and move it to the cloud, how I can, use what I have and add security. A great example that I always like to enhance and highlight when we speak about comprehensive, security is add policy control to all of your clients and detecting where they are and making sure file transfer is on or off, copy and paste or clipboard redirection. So instead of going to every single device or working on very complex GPOs, we have an easy control set, which I'll show in the demo today, and how can be done. The second aspect here is the easy to deploy and maintain. So deploying wizards, applications, or even deploying, configuring profiles. So if you're thinking about using user profile disks or other technologies like that, you don't have to know deeply Microsoft RDS. We have wizards behind the scenes that will enable, configure, and assign the profile disks to your users. And this particular feature works on either dedicated on-prem or cloud environments, and as well if you have a hybrid approach, synchronizing the information back from one location to another. At Parallels, we take the end user experience very seriously. So the mobility side, how can I use my iPad or Android devices in my mobile force to have a true easy experience when I use the technology, not using those devices only for entertaining, which is what people do for the most part, but access my applications and have, for example, a Bluetooth mouse that I could interact with that. And on the cloud readiness, I already mentioned, we support Microsoft Azure, AWS, and in certain other markets, if you have Alibaba or other vendors or even Google Cloud, that it's also not a problem for us. In the functionality level, how can we help? Well, basically, we have a few use cases, which is desktop as a service, where you can run your Windows PCs or Windows virtual machines on Azure, AWS, or on hypervisor, or even local, and give them a portal access that they don't require VPN to access them. The second large use case is the typical application publishing that you can see that a lot of people use on remote apps or Citrix Zen app servers to publish those apps. And it can be Quicken, can be your homegrown application, or even Microsoft Office. And VDI is another use case that we serve, where it's hybrid deployment, where certain components from VDI, they either run on-premise or they could be in some degree working with the cloud deployment. On the HTML5, and this is actually a very cool feature, because HTML5, we think we are unique in a few different ways. HTML5, it's a portal, and as well, a client. So comparing to what you see in the marketplace, usually you have a portal who opens a client. Our approach, it's combined. It comes pre-configured in every single deployment, including our POC appliance that would you see on Azure. The second interesting factor, which is very cool, is we do one-click printing on HTML5, printing redirection, and if you would like to use, we do file transfer. So you can file transfer with HTML5, not depending anymore on clients. So let's say this is your use case. I would tell you a year or two ago that you would have to use a client for that use case. We would push the clients and such. In our case anymore, that's not needed. So you can do it right on HTML5. And that actually will be part of the demo as well. For larger organizations that have automation tools, we provide a RESTful API using PowerShell, where your admins could deploy, backup, restore, or even use scripts to scale up or scale down Parallels remote application server, I would say the remote desktop hosts, if you need it. And this is interesting because we will be introducing in our summer release a notification environment or notification triggers that will invoke your scripts for scaling and scale up or scaling down your environment. And this is very good for cloud because that could help you to reduce operational costs from cloud if you use, monthly billing perspective with those vendors. On the load balancing, if you use on-premise, we provide you all-inclusive load balancing technology, not only for remote desktop services only. We provide you resource base, by the way, but on the gateway access, which is how users connect from the internet to your environment. And the beauty as well, we also work with AWS load balancers, so you don't have to add another VM for load balancing. And we work with Azure high availability load balancers as well. So in a hybrid deployment, you could use our load balancer for on-prem side, and their failover for entry point through those cloud vendors, they can use a native option or container offer coming from these vendors. On the two-factor authentication side, we work with SafeNet, DeepNet for a long time. But over the years, we introduced the capability to use a radius proxy where we can integrate with pretty much any vendor that has radius proxy in your system. And here's how it works. You enable them, and then you log in with your Active Directory credentials, and then you're requested to use a one-time password. And with Duo or other vendors, you get like a 6-digit number or a keystroke with numbers and letters. You get in, and then you access your apps. And that is actually part of the demo today, which I'll show you in a few moments. In the third side, or the third part of the core features, universal printing comes out of the box. That's a good area where we help customers to reduce third-party applications that might be currently being used in Citrix or VMware environments using our own printing. And it works pretty well for like 95 or 96% of the printers out there, especially for printing redirection and the mobility experience, like using Apple AirPrint capability or using Android printing and such. And on the client policy side, this is another good differentiator we have, which provides total control of your clients, policies, behaviors, and usage. And we introduce as well like a failover capability that if a gateway fails, we can set a policy that temporarily reconfigures the client so users don't have to call you or call your IT people to redirect their access to the printers or access to the applications. So one more point here, if you have any questions again, please post them in our Q&A and we'll be addressing them in the end of the webinar today. Okay, so let's move to the next slide. Here is just an example of how the experience would work in multiple environments. And actually, this is just an illustration we have for the presentations, but we can show you today a few different ways of accessing remote application server. And you will see that it is pretty much a seamless way to do it across the board. On the flexibility side, doesn't matter if you're using RAS workloads on-premise or hybrid or only cloud. We support pretty much on the remote desktop server sides all versions of Windows Server. So we don't force you to go to a specific Windows operating system where your applications might not work or run in compatibility mode or something that would be difficult for the app to run. We do the opposite. And the same thing happens, sorry if I'm getting too technical here, if you need to go to different session managements or session environments, set variables, right? We can do per environment or per application, integrating a couple of scripts or very small little customizations. And that's where a proof of concept comes across, right? So just to recap, on-prem, you're running everything on your environment. On cloud service providers, you can find us pretty much on their marketplaces where you can use our appliance for free for 30 days. And here's another interesting point. If you already have cloud deployments, we can install remote application on your existing farms, which we have seen so far with a couple of managed service providers and a few enterprise customers. So we use what you already have. You don't have to adapt to run with remote application server. So the hybrid deployments, which is more typical for what we see. Why? Because companies have an existing infrastructure and is slowly moving to cloud. So I'll give you two examples here. One of them you can have just as a failover, but what we see a lot is companies using VPN routes or express routes to allow traffic to go back and forth, and we can set different tunneling policies where if users are connecting from your Azure or AWS, everything happens there with your terminal servers and remote desktop servers and such. And if they're using local data center, traffic will be routed. Or you can dynamically distribute the workload. So it's a good use case to do that. So here in this slide, here shows like a typical 100% deployment running on the Azure infrastructure, where we have a few components. So where you see the two letters PA, it's called publishing agent, which is the controller component, the console, the terminal server that you have, and gateways. Now, what we see as a next view here is on the hybrid side, it will be distributed. So you can pretty much use a flexible approach. You define where the components will be running, or we would be working with you, and then set where they should be running. We provide you free support throughout the testing and the proof of concept, and we have support team that could help you 24/7 in case you have questions or even videos that you can follow to make sure you're doing the right configuration and changes. One good case study we have here is Texas Tech. Pretty much we replace Citrix with Parallels Remote Application Server. This is a very common use case, people running Microsoft Office tools. But the idea here is, first of all, cost. We cut existing Citrix maintenance cost by 60% using Remote Application Server. And as well, we added better capabilities in the HTML5 delivery side for their group. And, you don't have to have a dedicated person working on those environments anymore. And the knowledge to run Parallels Remote Application Server, it's just much simpler than Citrix or VMware. The second one is University of Cambridge, which is primary reason they moved. It was also mobile experience. And I'm using universities here is because the diversity of devices, it's crazy. It's pretty much you find everything. Mac, Windows, Chromebooks, and sometimes just tablets that where students use. So enterprises are more strict about the platforms. So with the knowledge we have working in healthcare, manufacturing, education, it's easy for us to come and work with you and show you that diversity to be used. The next one is a healthcare. So, excuse me, sorry. Yeah, it's a healthcare / county customer. They were using pure remote desktop services. And we enhanced their security. We enhanced the user experience, especially on the control of the clients, knowing who is accessing the applications. And something that I haven't mentioned yet, all of our features, it is a single SKU, which means you can have access to everything. Just you pay the subscription per user per year in the enterprise level and every month in the SPLA service provider level. So what I wanted to connect to this topic here is related to reporting. So which users have been using the technology, for how long, what applications they have been using. So it's fairly flexible and fairly direct to showcase to you all of those capabilities. So let's move to the demo. And again, if you have additional questions about case studies and so on, you can also find that information in our website and download, or even we could do reference calls with your users and customer base. So let me share from my screen over here. Let me switch to my screen sharing. And the first thing that you will see here is what we call the RAS HTML5 portal or client. It is branded as Parallels. You can customize changing the colors, logos to look more what you need or how you want it to look from your organization perspective. You can have links included in the bottom, like calling support, documentation, your website, or even different ways to log into the solution. The authentication happens or depends on Active Directory, and the browser uses or detects automatically if you have it. If you don't, we help our customers to simplify the deployment side using our clients, which you can download and push the configuration to the client, or simply just install it and interact it with your applications using either a direct access to an application, like let's say using Parallels Client, or even HTML5. In many cases, customers just like to keep HTML5 on all the time, and the clients work as well if you're using direct access. When you use HTML5, we have this bar here on the right side where you can move around. You can use copy and paste features to upload and download. Of course, that is a policy that you can restrict users to use it or not. And that can be configured per RD session host and as well by gateway that you have. So let me open this particular Excel sheet I can see, I can play around, I can play as a regular document. We mimic this particular workspace as everything here in the browser. So if I open the Parallels console now, we'll see that it's opening here as a second tab. So you can switch back and forth, and I'll show you the iOS experience soon that works very, very similarly. Let's say I finish the editings of this particular document, and I decide to print. So sending to the printer, you can choose different printers, and one of them is I can use my HTML5 universal printer. And when I click on printer, we'll be sending the document, and that will be given or sent directly to the printer that you have as default. Or if you have multiple printers, here's an example. It's like printing a web page. You can change the printers and parameters that you have. My home printer has a two-sided option, so you can very easily integrate to that case. On HTML5, another interesting feature is if I want to upload or download, like I mentioned, I can click on the upload button. We look into your operating system. I'm using a Mac. I have here my presentation that I'm showing you today. I can just say, let's move it to my cloud server. That will be asking where we should save that information. I can save it into my local profile or my remote profile, my documents folder. So I can save it to my document folder. And this particular file now, it's being uploaded. Curious thing, I'm in the west coast of the US today. This particular data center is running on the east coast, so actually it's Azure East. And, I just uploaded the file here, which is 2 megabytes in just, less than 30 seconds. So it is, fairly, useful and easy to use. Now, the list of applications you see here, it depends on your use case and security that you want to do. So I have admin access, so I can see virtual desktops, I can see the console, or even admin tools, which I don't require to use VPN to connect to securely to my backend infrastructure. All the communication is secure. It's using a single port, like HTTPS port 443 for that matter. And what is also very interesting here in this particular access is I can come to my Victor apps, and I can select my VDI or set a variable in my environment, or I can just use my Windows 10 desktop. So for example, Windows 10 has Cortana or has only applications that only would run on Windows 7 or even Windows 10. I can come here and either use the client or using HTML5 experience. So let's use HTML5 for the moment. We open a new page. We're connecting to the resource. We're logging into the virtual machine with my credentials. So we pass the credentials to the session. Users don't have to log in again. And once I'm in, I can click on this button here to expand the window. And now I have a Windows 10 on my Mac using audio and printing redirection, or if I use the client, integrates with the local disks. And here I have Cortana, I have my applications, I'm opening Skype or my antivirus and such. So we're extremely flexible on how you want to use or deliver those apps or desktops to your end users. So let's go back here, and I don't need my VDI for now, so I can close the window. And let's take a look on the admin side for a moment. In Remote Application Server, I always like to highlight one point. One console for everything. One console you run wizards, so your entry point to add session hosts. If you have a virtual machine, push our agent. One place where you can publish applications. One place that you control access. So the publishing application wizard, you can look into your servers and you can look into your applications. You can look into the resources that you have. and you can, publish, using a very simple wizard saying, in this particular server, we'll scan the apps that you have, and then you can simply, add a resource. Let's say I want to re-add again, PowerPoint. So from a publishing perspective, it's simple as is. And from a publishing side perspective, we just added PowerPoint here. Then you can start playing around on very specific things, like, do you want this application to start automatically? Do you want to change the name? Do you want to filter access? And the filtering access is now all users can access the app. But if you want to restrict which gateway they're coming from, IP address, client names, and such, we use an and/or type of approach or rules to control it. So I want to control per user, and let me say the following user or groups. Let's say pre-sales have access. Oops, let me just see here, partners, for example. We're scanning the domain. We found the user group partners. And once I click apply, that information is going to be saved throughout the controllers and the database. I don't have to ask users to log in again. They just need to refresh their view, and then the resource will be published and presented in a few seconds. So I'm not a partner user. So if I come over here, and now I add an individual called me, which is Victor, apply this setting, refresh, and there is the resource. Easy to use, easy to publish, or even, remove the resource around. The inheritance can also happen on, folder level. You can do the same, type of approach. But in the farm that you have, we provide a dashboard that you can see all of the status of your components. I can see, for example, how my servers, users connected. We have a couple of people connected into this demo environment as we speak. I have different gateways and remote PCs. And here, what I mentioned, you can create tunneling policies to set traffic to go through one cloud or all of the clouds, or even, or a specific data center to be used. Once you use RAS gateways, all of those components besides the gateway are included. So you can have one gateway, 100 gateways. One remote desktop server, 100. It doesn't matter. We only count per concurrent user that you use our technology. So in HTML5, we can, for example, set the behavior. My standard behavior is use Parallels client and fallback feature. Or I could just set to use HTML5 only. And the way you can customize it is very simple. You can have different URLs for different groups or even companies or tenants. But if I want to change my default behavior, and here I have it, let me just reload the page showing that it's running with a red banner. I can simply come and change this from red to blue, or pick a specific color palette that you want. Here says Parallels RAS. You can change the title, add your logo, message, bars, and so it's pretty much the way you can do. So I just changed to blue, and once I apply this setting, users don't get disconnected, no interruption. The change will happen in real time. And the next time I come to my RAS environment and actually reload the page, now we have blue. So it's, again, pretty straightforward. On the user side, which they don't use, they don't know, but they use all the time, we're using resource-based load balancing, and as well, we are controlling or limiting the sessions to use one remote desktop account. That helps you to save investment on the Microsoft licensing side. And printing, scanning are default enabled for your devices. So you don't have to think about, oh, do I have printing enabled? How do I enable it? Well, you just go to printing. But if you want to change the controls, right-click and you enable or disable that particular resource. For iOS and Android, we introduced what we call useful shortcuts, where you can play around different applications and change them. Instead of, this is very cool for ERPs or EMRs, where you need specific keystrokes. We can store or capture them here on the server. You can just simply add a new shortcut and add the keystroke that you need, and assign it to an application or different applications. So here I have a few apps that have been assigned to it. And let me pause from the admin console side, and let me share now my iPad, and I'll show you this particular use case right there. So let me just switch here from one device here to go to my iPad. So let me just stop sharing for a second. And let's share the iPad screen. So it takes a second here to have that enabled. So I'll share my screen one more time. Maximize it. So this is my iPad where I have already the Parallels client installed. You can do this way, or you can simply come to the browser and use the HTML5 experience. So we support, first of all, you can use Touch ID capabilities or passcodes to access to your client. We reconnect to the resources that you have. So that's one option that you can use Parallels client on the mobile experience. And the bar here on the right side uses the same approach we had on HTML5. The keyboard, resources about using mouse, resolution, printing capabilities. I reconnected to a virtual desktop that I already had it open. But if I want to see the list of applications that I have or switch back and forth, we have this nice app launcher. So here on the app launcher side, it's the same type of visualization you see into the HTML5 or native clients. I can come to, let's say, Microsoft Office and open Microsoft Excel. And opening Excel, it's interesting because we're using application sharing capabilities. So if you can copy content from one app to another, and on Windows and Mac clients especially, what we do, we allow you to have a drag and drop option as well. So we're loading the profile settings here, which will take a couple of seconds because it's the first login to the app. And once the application is loaded, actually, let me open Excel one more time. We can use the same features I had it before on the desktop. So a few things to show you. So let's create the document. And without using a third-party mouse or using a nice magnifier that mimics a mouse, giving the precision and access to the application controllers, which means we're detecting what options is clicking and holding, I can click and precisely move images or resize them. I can click on specific colors and use the tap and hold feature and click around. You can see it and pretty much change it in a very quickly way. And as well, you can print it. So because we're handling multiple sessions using my name, we wanted to simplify here different printers. And I can pick the printer that I am assigned to it. I just look into this particular resource to be printed, send it, and we natively integrate with AirPrint. Of course, this is just, got to this particular bar, but I can just click into the same document, print it, send it to the printer. Now we see the complete document presented in the HTML5, and then integration with the AirPrint side. So it took a little bit longer to transfer the document here. What we do in real time, you can switch different mouse experience. You can use a Dumbo mouse that, to interact with the app. But using third-party technology, and here, let me just switch to my main screen here, go to Bluetooth. We have an integration with a company name called SwiftPoint GT. And this is a Bluetooth mouse that it's already linked to my iPad. It's connected now, and the next time I go back to my app, I will do the authentication here. I don't use touch. I can use a regular mouse and use left click, right click, and pretty much have an iPad working like a PC. The same thing would work or be presented if you're using you know, an Android device. When we talk about security, so let me just switch back here from you know, my iPad screen and go back to the console one more time. The idea here is to enhance your end user experience and as well security, right? So here in the connection side, we have what we call second level authentication. And you can use different brokers. And in my case, I have one dedicated gateway just to showcase this particular option. And using Duo, which is a third-party vendor, of course, if you have your own vendors, by all means, you can use them and integrate with remote application server. So I just plugged my iPad to my computer here, and I'll share it in a moment. So the settings are fairly simple to be done. We're communicating with a proxy that we're doing authentication through username and as well through the OTP side. So let me click on log on with two-factor authentication. It's the same portal experience. And let me just pause here for a moment and let me connect my iPad one more time. And then I'll have side by side the dual component, and then of course we'll have the screen that we have you know, the authentication coming along. So let me just come back here to QuickTime. And then share the resource again with my screen, and then we can see the dual piece. Okay, so the iPad now is visible. So let me resume the screen sharing and resize it here very quickly. And I will open here my application called Duo. So I will log in with my user. And I see an OTP requirement. I'll click on this green key. We'll get a key from Duo, 617507. I'll click OK. Authentication happened. So I use a two-factor authentication to get access to my resource. This integration between remote application server and MFA usually takes less than 20 minutes to be configured. And we have several knowledge-based articles to assist you to configure or even do the setup. Okay, the next part for us to discuss here or have you know, in this particular webinar, it's related to policy control. And the policy control is related to how we handle hundreds or sometimes thousands of users accessing remote application server. And the benefit here is the policies can be controlled not by client type only, but we can tie to a specific user or groups that you have in your organization. And pretty much the policies will allow you to control every single aspect of the client, how connections work, if you want to add a failover connection, how display settings work, printing, if it's enabled or disabled for the user, local resources. And here in local resources, we can control file transfer through the protocol, COM ports, smart cards, USB devices. And here's a very important thing, that if you're using plug-and-play features on Mac or Chromebooks or other devices, you plug, in a few seconds later, that resource will be added automatically. And as well, if you want to do, this drive redirection. So if you have specific drives or shares to be added, of course you can disable that feature if that is the main case. In the experience side, we can use automatic detection of the quality and compression that will be enabled or disabled, or use specific profiles. For my user ID, I'm using a specific profile, and still you can bypass or allow or disallow certain features to be presented for the user. So it's very, very cool on this side, because certain users might want to have specific experience levels. You can open exceptions for them, and that is controlled by a policy that your admins will be working on. And of course, printing and scanning this is always compressed. And with more and more devices like Surface Book or Mac devices or regular Windows laptops having high definition displays, we support DPI awareness. And for speeding up printing mapping and application mapping, we do cache printers for you. And one feature we added over time, it was redirection. In case you have an emergency, you need to make some changes in an environment in real time, or there's a data center failover and your load balance takes time to adapt, you can reroute in real time client access. In the administration side, we can have one user or groups managing remote application server. So this is nice because you can, delegate it and install the console from an admin perspective pretty much everywhere. But I mentioned to you about reporting. So we provide you out of the box 2 different reporting capabilities. One of them is related to get health indicators about session resources usage throughout your remote application server farms. But from a usage perspective, here we connect to, we're connecting to a SQL Server database. And this particular report, we're gathering the list of them from the database. We can see, for example, reports related to user consumption, system health, and application usage. And of course, those reports, they are giving information, for example, from the last 7 days. And the reports will give us the flexibility to go back, pretty much all the way back since the data collection started. So from application usage, let me just move this bar here a little bit up. I can see, for example, that over the last 7 days, all of these apps with the hashtags means application that Parallels have triggered and backend apps have been executed. And I can comment on the user activity side, and I can see the same thing. I can see the last 7 days how many sessions, Chris opened, Raz, Dave, James, and others. So you have the visibility to change that. Of course, you can export those reports into different feeds. If you use BI tools, you can connect to the database and so on. And finally, on the licensing side, you have true visibility about number of pickup users, current usage, billing information, and of course, you can link that back to what we call Parallels My Account, where you can see consumption of Splot keys or service provider keys or your existing keys, and see how billing or subscription is being managed. So from a demo perspective, and of course because of time, these are the areas that I wanted to highlight. If you have also thin clients like HP Inc., Dellwise, or iGel, we have partnership with them. So we have native clients that can work on those technologies at any time. So let me just go back here and let's take a look into questions. Let me take a look. Okay, so the first question I see here is, how do we price remote application server? Okay, so Raz has 2 pricing models. We have what we call subscription model. It's around $99 per user per year. And the price, it's only based upon concurrent users. We don't care about what components you use and how. You can use as many as you want. And we also have a service provider license agreement model, which are used for MSPs or ISVs. And that is pretty much like a monthly billing option where you use RAS and we look into peak users every month and then we send you a bill. It's pretty much like a utility bill or like a cell phone bill that you use and pay afterwards. Okay, the next question is, okay, it's about session shadowing and access. Yes, in Parallels Remote Application Server, if a user needs help, we can control the sessions by disconnecting, logging them off, and if you need to do remote access or shadowing, we have that option or functionality available out of the box. The next one is, do we work with other companies such as Imprivata? Yes. If you use Imprivata for single sign-on or other controls or like a multi-factor authentication, yes. We use the Radius proxy to do that. And let me see here, next question is, how many users can you have in the virtual machine with remote desktop search? It depends. Usually the load for RD session host varies between 20 to 40. It depends on the use case. In fact, in our website, we have a resources page and also how-to videos on how to do sizing and deployments. Let me see if there are any other questions. Yeah, there's another one came here. Okay, is the RAS gateway installed on a server local to the session host, or is the access to the session host? Well, for smaller deployments, we can deploy all of the gateways, controller, and session host together. In many cases, we have customers that usually we recommend to separate the gateways and the session hosts for performance purposes and security sometimes. So you can have the controller and gateways together, or you can, use the gateway role install or the PA role or the TS host role installed on any Windows Server device. The only Linux component we have is our high availability load balance, usually used on-prem. Okay, so looks like I answered all of the questions, but if you have additional questions later, or you want a demo or work in a proof of concept, please contact us. We'll be sending you a follow-up email. And as well, if you want, again, to do a proof of concept, we're more than happy to assist you. So thank you all so much for your time today, and look working with you in the future. Thank you.